I went home and I just couldn't stop thinking about her.
When you're in country and you're sitting still and idle, that's a bad, bad sign.
She no longer had a heartbeat. She wasn't breathing. And I was the first one on the chest. I started compressions first.
Need advocates. We need people that are going to hold companies, government, hold these people accountable.
All right, welcome to the Heroes Debrief. We're coming back and providing a platform for our veterans and first responders to share their stories. We want to tell you that this content is for adults, and if you have any little kids in the room, you probably should be wearing your earbuds. Some of the content can be graphic in nature. We're excited to be sitting down with Travis. He's coming as a Marine, and he's going to sit down and tell us a little bit about his story. So, why don't you give us a little insight as far as when you enlisted and that sort of thing? We'll start there.
Yeah, definitely. I enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserves in 2012, and started. Well, I enlisted when I was 24 years old, a little bit later than most people would have, enlisted in the armed forces. And for me personally, it was I was going through a season where I needed a kick in the rear. I needed to be pushed out of my comfort zone and challenged in some ways. And I was looking for some discipline and direction, and I certainly got that in the Marine Corps and whatnot. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserves because I wanted to go back to school, have the ability to still start a family if I was led that way, but also still serve in that capacity and whatnot. So I went that route. Was with 124 Alpha Company here in Grand Rapids for the 6 years, and then my last year we were activated and went to the Helmand province of Afghanistan.
What is the 124 Alpha?
We are an infantry unit, so our infantry battalion, I should say, 124. We had units in Grand Rapids, Lansing, as well as Terre Haute, Indiana. At one point, it was in Saginaw, Michigan, and it moved. Currently, there's still the Terre Haute and Lansing units, but our unit moved down to Battle Creek, and they drill out of there now. So there's 3 infantry companies, and then our headquarters is in Selfridge.
Okay. So prior to you enlisting, was there anything that like really geared towards being a Marine or joining the military in general?
Yeah, definitely. So the first 6 years of after high school, I really didn't have a particular. I didn't have a sense of purpose. Didn't know what I wanted to do with life. I settled for restaurant management, and I enjoyed it. It was a good steady paycheck, and had a lot of fun, and made some good memories. But I got to a point where, in my early 20s, where I just felt like I was somewhat of a buoy in the water, kind of just floating about, and I felt somewhat like I was just drifting, and just existing in a sense. And so the Marine Corps was one of those things that I kind of had considered as a kid, dreamt about as a kid, and wanted to go that direction. But for whatever reason, after high school, I just didn't. And so by age 23, 24, I came to a point in my life where I just sat down and had an honest conversation with myself, and thought, where am I going? What do I want to do with my life? What do I want my legacy to be? Um, and why am I feeling so hollow? I guess
Mm-hmm.
was another feeling as well too. And so it took a little bit of researching, digging around online, looking for answers, looking for options and ideas, and had a few friends that enlisted in the Marine Corps and went either active or reserve. And I saw what it did for them in terms of instilling some discipline and direction in their lives. And so I felt like I needed that push, and I went to the recruiter in Granville, actually, over in 54th, I believe it was. And it was funny because I said, you can't talk me out of it. I want to do the Marine Corps Reserves. I want to do infantry. And of course, a recruiter's not going to talk you out of it.
Mhm.
You're just a gold mine to them. Say, absolutely, here's the paper. But yeah, no, went that route, and so it was March of 2012 when I enlisted. Went off to San Diego in August of that year. 3 months later, I came home for recruiting duty. Went back just before Christmas for infantry school, and then in March of 2013 is when I checked into our unit here in Grand Rapids.
So, your boot camp was 3 months.
Yeah, yep, 13 weeks.
So, was there any difference between reservist boot camp or active duty Marines?
No, we all went to the same boot camp, and even infantry school was the same for all of us. But yeah, it was 13 weeks. It was that first phase is where you're learning how to be a Marine in a sense. You're not worried about weapon systems or even like tactics as much as you are just learning how to be a Marine. How to take care of yourself, your body, your gear, your belongings. You're learning, going through all these classes about the history of the Marine Corps and why this and that is important in the Marine Corps. This kind of history, and then the second phase is where you're getting some opportunities to be in the field. It's your first chance, really utilizing your M16 weapon and um, getting outside and doing some actual shooting and whatnot. Um, and then by phase three, those last few weeks is where you've you've gone through some gruff with your fellow Marines and the other guys in your platoon, and so there's a little bit more respect than there was when you first got there in week one, and it's just all screaming.
Yeah.
And
So, as you were talking, it's like you kind of have a very like objective thought process on boot camp, because my boot camp was just, it was a lot of screaming, but you like took it with a grain of salt and it's like, yeah, I learned stuff. I learned about the Marine Corps. I got screamed at is what I was thinking.
definitely got screamed at. I think what helped me too is that because I was older when I was in boot camp. When you're 17 and 18 in boot camp, it's your first life experience outside of being in your home environment, and so you go from doing your laundry and going to sports and doing your homework to just nonstop screaming for the first 5 weeks of boot camp. It's just oh, what did I get into? And granted, when I got there, yeah, there was my moments where I was like, what did I get myself into? Like, am I gonna be able to get through this? But because I had a little bit of life experience behind me already, I was able to look at it, I guess, in an objective mindset and be like, okay, what are we doing here? Why is this important? Why am I getting screamed at? And so because of that, I kind of flew under the radar for most of boot camp. I didn't get messed with a lot, didn't get IT'd a lot. I did what I was told. I wouldn't say I went through the motions, but I just, stayed in line. I didn't really color outside the lines, so to speak. It wasn't until the very end of boot camp where they found my buttons and they pressed them, and I snapped. And there was one day where I got pretty belligerent, but I just snapped, and they figured out how to get underneath my skin because it's their job to.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, even as things were going on, like I was like, I know why you're doing this. I know why you're saying that. I know you're just trying to, And I got defiant, and it's not my best moment of boot camp, but I was, and I'm able to look back at that moment and be like, why did this happen? Why did I act that way? And it was because I was already thinking objectively, why is this happening? Why are we getting screamed at? Why do we have to do these things? And whereas every other 17-year-old's like, kind of like just a sheep in a herd, I was able to be like, well, no, you don't take that personally. They're just paid to like figure out where your buttons are and break you apart and put you back together so you can be part of a unit and be part of a team and whatnot.
I think my biggest problem in boot camp was, how there's the whole, you had how many drill instructors?
We had 4 for 90 guys.
Yeah. So we had 3, and like you'd have one person tell you one thing, and then your other drill instructor would tell you something different.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing was like, I don't understand why you guys can't get your shit together. Like, it's like, you're the problem, not me. And that did not work out well in my favor. That meant a lot of push-ups. So, yeah. So maybe some of that clarity with age, understanding that they're doing that to you on purpose. But my brother went in 7 years old before I did. So he gave me a pretty good heads up of like, watch your mouth, do what you're told, don't get noticed, and you'll be fine. So
yeah, it's kind of how it was. I mean, and speaking on that too, like Yeah, I was under the radar, but it and my struggle was that I don't in civilian world, in the real world, I hate being told to do something that I'm already doing or is already on my radar.
Hmm.
Because I'm like, I'm already ahead of you. I already got this. In boot camp, you can't defend yourself. You can't say that. Like, you can't say, oh, drill instructor so and so, I was already about to do this. It's just aye, aye, sir, and shut up. So if you're getting screamed at for something that you either didn't do wrong, that wasn't true, or because you didn't catch something, it's like, no, you can't defend yourself. You just have to say aye, aye, sir, and carry on. So yeah.
Yeah. So, anything else in boot camp?
Um,
What time of year did you go? Well, you went to San Diego, so I didn't really. That's
it
not pertinent.
not really. It was like late summer and fall, so like it was. I think it rained one day for like 15 minutes.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
was it. But other than that, it was just dry, and maybe it's just me being positive. But for me too, the thing was like it's like 3 months where you don't have to worry about what you're wearing or what you have to eat. You're getting good sleep. You're getting 3 meals a day, and like it's like structure, and I kind of found comfort in that, and oddly. Um, and so yeah, it was fall, and went by pretty quick, I'd say.
So after boot camp, what happened? Did you go immediately into your AIT or?
No, it was about a month of recruiting duty, and 3 weeks of recruiting duty, and then I flew back to San Diego to start infantry school. Um, we all got to the USO in San Diego around the same time, and I was on the last bus to Pendleton, and so the other buses ahead of us went to Alpha Company and got picked up right away for the next rotation of infantry school. And whereas our bus was like, we already have enough guys. You guys are going to Lima Company and holding until the next rotation picks up, which was going to be after New Year's. So it was about 3 weeks of me being in Lima Company, which is just you and a bunch of you know, broke people. And so which is probably the most depressing place you can be on that base because like everybody there's been in holding for anywhere from a month to 6 months to a year of just being in holding, not being in the fleet, not being in training. Either they got hurt or injured or they claimed something was wrong with them, and so they just got put in this one unit where they didn't do anything but sit in their barracks and sometimes do working parties. Like I think one working party I had to do was weed a volleyball court. But then it was after New Year's that I picked up with the next rotation for ITB, and then 2 months and some change later, I checked out. And what I'll say about infantry school is that's where I really got challenged
Mhm.
because there's challenges in boot camp, mental and emotional challenges for sure. It's a brand new place. You're using the restroom in front of people you don't even know and showering with them. You're close with them. You're like supposed to rely on them for all kinds of support in different ways. Whereas infantry school is like where physically I got really pushed because, um, as you've seen, I'm not vertically blessed. so so I'm in platoon with 90 other guys. We're doing 5K, 10K, 15K, and 20K hikes, and we're doing range movements across the base to different ranges, which doesn't mean walking to the next range. It means running your ass off with a full combat load as fast as you can. And my loaded legs are going this fast to keep up with guys that are just like going like this.
Right.
So that's where I really got challenged because I had the energy and the fortitude to finish these hikes and these range movements, but at their rate, I couldn't keep up, and I fell out of a few hikes, and so I had to make up. I had to make up a few hikes, and I had to find a way to push myself. My mind was telling me, "Stop! We can't do this. You're not qualified. You're not going to make it." And I have to tell my own mind, like, "No, f off. We're going to finish this. We don't have a choice.
Mhm.
You got a mission. You've got an objective. You got to finish it. Whether your mind's telling you can or can't, whatever, you have to overcome that and push against it and finish." So that was my first time having to really endure something like that in my own life. And so lo and behold, I graduated on time and finished with everybody else. But it took some remediation and some second chances to overcome these challenges.
Yeah. We want to take a moment to thank our principal sponsors. These companies have supported Hero Services from a more general perspective rather than sponsoring a singular event. Window World, Paul Davis, and Bathworks have all committed to supporting Hero Services with their events as well as our various programs that we offer. Not only do these companies support Hero Services, but they have various other charitable donations as well. Please take the time to wind up looking into these companies in case you need any of your home renovation needs. Which I think that happens more often than what people realize, even in boot camp and through A school. Well, but so your infantry school, did you guys call that AIT or A school?
It was
Because that's different for
it's-
branches.
it's MOS school, but we call it ITB, so Infantry Training Battalion.
Okay.
So after your boot camp or basic training, either go to, if you're infantry, you go to ITB for 2 months.
Hmm.
If you're doing any MOS other than infantry, you go to MCT or Marine Combat Training for 2 weeks, where they basically take all these infantry trainings and compress them into like 2.5 weeks or so of training before you go do your actual school, whether you're going to be a supply or somewhere in aviation or somewhere in with vehicles or whatever. You do MCT first, and then you go carry on to your MOS school. Infantry school, you just go do your 2.5 months of infantry training, and then you go to the fleet.
Mm.
So a lot of the guys that I was with got shipped off to either, let's see, I think 8th and I, Quantico, Hawaii, or just right up the road in Pendleton. They just basically went around the corner, and that was their base. Whereas, the rest of us got to go home as reservists. So we took some flack, but it was okay.
Yeah. So, so from start to finish, how much time was it when you started boot camp to finish in
Yep.
your MOS schooling?
Yeah, so I got to San Diego August 14th, and then I checked into my unit in Grand Rapids on March 6th.
Okay. So you're looking at what, 6 months approximately?
6 months basically of
Yeah.
training and stuff like that. Yeah.
So, and then prior to that, did you spend any time outside of this local area, or did you
No,
travel?
not really. I mean, I did my share of traveling as a kid. I mean, my parents, like, they were awesome in that they invested us with Boy Scouts and band camps and all these other things we get to do. We took family trips all the time, so I had seen a lot of the country already.
Mm-hmm.
And actually a lot of trips that I wish I could go back and do all over again too, even. But I had my share of backpacking adventures, high adventure stuff to the Boy Scouts. As an adult, between high school and that point, my life was pretty bland, very vanilla. Didn't do much traveling, didn't do anything exciting. I didn't go seek out new things to do. I think the company that I was with, or the people that I had in my circle around me, in your early 20s, you're learning a lot about life. And I think you kind of just latch onto anybody who will have you back. And you're not really thinking twice about the company that you're keeping and the circle that you're keeping. And so I had some cool people around me, but like I didn't really surround myself with people that invested in me, nor was I the friend to invest in other people. I was still learning how to be that kind of person. So I think I found myself, I don't want to say wasting time, but that little window of my life, there wasn't much going on. It was just living. And so going through that experience, those 6 months it was great, not just because I was getting my butt kicked and screamed at. It was great because I was getting away from home, which, as I'm sure gives you plenty of time to think about your life and where you're going and what you want to do, and it gives you time to learn about yourself, an opportunity and space to learn about yourself.
Yeah. The reason why I circled back to kind of at the beginning is you mentioned something earlier about like, now all of a sudden you're living in a barracks with 90 guys or whatever. Like for me, that 90 guys had people of all walks of life. Like I come from the backwoods of Michigan, like very small town, has a post office and not even a gas station, part of Michigan. So like going to when I went to boot camp, it was like, we got the southern boy from Texas, and then you got the guy from New York, and then the guy from the cornfields in Nebraska or whatever. It's like all of us are sharing the same room, and it was a huge culture shock. So, do you have any
Yeah, it's
like comments on that?
for sure. It's funny because you say that because like I think of this scene in Forrest Gump when they're on the trail in Vietnam, and they're like patrolling, and he's just randomly talking to him about the people in his patrol, and he's like, and there was Dallas. I don't know where he came from, but he was going through everybody in his platoon and how they all came from different walks of life, because that's exactly how it is. My platoon, everybody and their mother apparently was a state champion wrestler or football player. They all claim to be. A lot of California guys, a lot of Texas guys. I think there was one or two other people from Michigan with me, and then aside from that, a lot of Midwestern guys. We didn't have because everyone that isn't within a certain region goes to San Diego, and everyone else goes to um, Paris Island in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So there was nobody from the East Coast. Michigan was as far east as our platoon went, really. But we definitely had people from all kinds of walks of life: rich people, blue collar, brainiacs, and athletes, farm boys. And then the quiet, sensitive types, and stuff. So yeah, definitely people of all kinds of influences, and it was a very diverse demographic, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like a quilt.
Yeah.
It's like a quilt, different patterns.
For the most part, it's also like once you get out to the fleet and you end up kind of like starting to really understand how the military operates and stuff like that, seeing that transition of like everybody does come in from all these different walks of life, and then by the time that they do wind up coming out to their parent command, like they might have different backgrounds or whatever, but they're all starting to wind up kind of getting their similarities where it's like military bearing, structure, all of that stuff. So that was kind of interesting early on in my enlistment, seeing the younger guys coming in too, after you can piece it all together and you're not a part of that machine. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not going there to be an individual. You're going in there to have your individualism broken apart and reassembled so that you can be part of a unit, a functioning unit. And so like, for the younger guys, part of the culture shock is you're now living with 90 other guys who have different views as you do too. And like everyone has different tastes in music, political affiliations, religious beliefs, if any at all, and all kinds. But like nobody ever argued about that stuff, but it was there. Like our differences were there, but we didn't argue about anything. And you just naturally become part of this melting pot of just all these ideologies and all these beliefs and these backgrounds and these stories that we all have and these life experiences. And so that when you get to the fleet or when you get to like your guys, it's like the common thing that you share trumps everything. This brotherhood, this family that we have between our brothers and sisters in the military, it trumps everything else going on in our lives when we're together and working.
Yep. So you're losing your individualism and stuff like that. How does that reflect with being a reservist? Because a lot of times, for the reservists, you're kind of like, go to this schooling and then you transition out, go back home to do your job, and then you go to this schooling and then you transition out and now you're getting deployed. And there's a lot of like back and forth, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, there definitely is. I would still say that I guess mannerism is probably the right word, the best word I can think of. But a lot of the mannerisms that you carry from your young military life is more prominent in your civilian life than your civilian influences are in your military life. And what I mean by that is like when I show up for drill or show up for, training and whatnot, my sloppy civilian life isn't going to, if you're a good Marine or, service member, it's not going to ooze into your military, behavior and whatnot. I'm not going to just forget to salute or to forget my bearing and whatnot. It's almost like an automatic light switch in a sense, or clap on, I guess, it's like, oh, I'm in training, clap on. Nope, I'm back. I'm in uniform. I remember now, and staying at ease. I'm at attention. All these things that were grinded into us in boot camp and infantry school. We still remember them as reservists and stuff, and we still practice them, and it's almost effortless. And so, if anything, as a service member in the civilian world, those behaviors I think have more of an impact on that life than the other way around and whatnot. So it's kind of like riding a bike. You just get back on and start riding again.
So how did it impact your civilian life?
Um, I can't. I wouldn't say it was positive or negative per se. Uh, Especially as a reservist that was just training, I didn't talk about my service much, unless I had to get time off for work, of course. Um, because like we were just doing the same kind of training every year. Our the different infantry things we have to like re-verify and retrain on and stuff like that. So I didn't feel like there was much to brag about
Hmm.
or talk about. Um, and so I can't say that it really affected my civilian life too much before I deployed, at least those few years and whatnot. Um, and so yeah, not much there to really I can
Did,
think of.
did you go back into restaurant management?
Yeah, because like there was a desire to get out of it.
Hmm.
Because again, as a reservist, I wanted to go to school, and I don't know why I didn't go. Uh, I'm probably life circumstances just kept me from doing it, pulling the trigger. No pun intended. But we I lost my thought. I'm sorry. Went back into restaurant management. Yes.
Hmm.
I tried a different other couple of restaurants just to see if I'd have a different experience. And change things up if that would help. But I just was very unfulfilled those few years. 'Cause I was going from restaurant to restaurant. I tried working in a call center for a period of time just to because it was better money and gave me weekends off. Um, but I was still feeling really unfulfilled, and it took me a long time in my civilian life to find some answers and whatnot, which really I didn't find until my 30s. My 20s was a lot about discovery and trying to figure out what brings me joy, what makes me feel fulfilled and feel full. Um, and work wise, I've always felt like I could be happy doing pretty much anything in terms of, I mean, if I can pay my bills and take care of myself, I could be happy doing anything, which is a blessing. But in a sense, it's also a curse because I'm like, well, everybody else has these career goals and it's their identity. My identity was like, what, restaurant manager? And what is it? And I was trying to figure out what my identity was in that point. So my 20s was a lot about discovery and trying to figure out what was going to make me feel full in a sense.
So what were your trainings like prior to you getting deployed? So you're done with your MOS school, you're back home
Hmm.
doing the reservist thing, but you still got what is the training schedule? You got drill weekend and then 2 weeks a year?
Yeah, it was basically like 2 weeks every summer, and then you have your drill weekends. So between March of 2013 and then I'd say January of 2017. So for those 3 years or so, it was a lot of just there's a weekend where you're doing table one, um, rifle qual, and probably another weekend where you're doing table two and three, another weekend where you're doing live fire and maneuver trainings. So basically just going up and down across the golf course. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. And to spice things up, they'd add targets with balloons here and there. Um, Sometimes it was working on urban warfare training. Sometimes I was working on land navigation. Sometimes I was working on a lot of patrolling and uh, working on IED lanes as well. Especially once we knew that we were going to Afghanistan, then we did work on some of that stuff too and rehearse those things that we had been rehearsing for those few years leading up to that deployment. But if we weren't in the field learning those things, then there was like a weekend where we had to do medical stand down, all the medical stuff we have to keep up on, or we'd be if we did stay at the drill center for a weekend, we might do some other death by PowerPoint kind of presentation trainings and stuff, or just checking in other boxes like all of our annual cyber awareness training, and all those other stuff that we had to do every year. Um, it not much that was too exciting, but it was needed and it was necessary. And so, like, if we weren't doing something in in a particular moment, training wise, you'd still be rehearsing with your fire team or your squad, calling a 9 line, or a call for fire. Um, all the other little things that you have to make sure you know, so that if you are in a combat situation, can you quick rattle off, a 9 line so you can get a medevac to your position and whatnot and get your guy out of there. Stuff like that. So it was nothing too crazy. Once 2017 came around, and in January of that year, when we found out that we were going to Afghanistan, then we started tacking on other kinds of training, like um, if like submerged training. If we were submerged in a vehicle, can we get out? And stuff like that, or even more urban warfare training and more patrolling, more advanced kind of like clearing houses and clearing hallways, stuff like that. And
So was this still your 1 weekend a month, or or prior to you deploying, was it a little bit more frequent?
yeah, so prior to deploying, so then January 2017, we found out we're going to Afghanistan. So we still had our weekends. Uh, I think it was in January, February, March, and April. We had a little bit longer weekends, like long weekends. Um, and then we were in Grayling for 3 weeks in June. I had to go to Pennsylvania for about a week in Memorial Day week to learn how to drive some Humvees, 7 tons, Max Pro trucks, which is like the upgrade of the to the MRAP vehicle. And then July was when we went to North Carolina, Camp Lejeune for 3 months to do our pre-mob training and whatnot before we went to Afghanistan. And then we flew out to Afghanistan in October of 2017. So between getting that first word in January 2017, to coming back home to Michigan in May of 2018, that was about a year and 15, 16 months worth of training and workups and debriefs, the deployment itself. It's a good chunk of time out of your life and whatnot.
Earlier this summer, our local EMS community wound up losing an EMT due to their battle with mental health. One of the programs that Hero Services has is called our Tactical Santa program, and we are in contact with her surviving sons to wind up assisting them with Christmas. The program is set up where we wind up having an Amazon shopping list that is all of their requests for Christmas. Individuals can make purchases off from that Amazon shopping list, and those purchases will be mailed to Hero Services, where we will be wrapping those gifts and presenting them to the surviving sons. So if you don't mind helping us with this Christmas for these boys, they are 8 and 11, it would be greatly appreciated. You can wind up finding the shopping list in the show notes below, and we will be delivering the presents mid-December, and we will do what we can to wind up showing that day off on our social medias. However, we are going to be understanding of that family's privacy, so whatever content we'll be able to share with you, we will. So you had essentially 10 months of training before you actually got deployed, is that right?
Yeah.
January.
9, 10 months of training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess I never quite realized that. So when I was active duty, I had shore orders, so we flew everywhere, and my deployments weren't really deployments. It was like 3 months out of country, essentially. But our reservists that came to us or whatever, they never really had that extensive of a workup. Like they just wound up coming in, doing their trainings or whatever. I think if they did wound up deploying with us, which wasn't all that often, they would just wound up hopping in on a spot, and as long as they had their qualifications. So here in 10 months worth of commitment prior to you getting deployed, that's interesting.
It definitely is. Everything that, and some active guys might not believe this, but, everything that an active unit has to work on and learn, reservists have to be able to do all the same things and learn the same things and rehearse and get verified for the same trainings in a shorter, compressed, amount of time. It's kind of like when you're in school and you have like a semester of a class, or there's the option to take the accelerated course for 6 weeks, and all that work is compressed into that amount of time. And so for us, it was kind of the same thing where, well, if the government has to send someone to Afghanistan, they can send an active unit, or they can save some money
You're right.
and send some reservists, but make sure they get these trainings done, in this time frame and whatnot. And so we consider ourselves blessed to get that deployment, because at the time they weren't really deploying reservists, let alone a combat deployment, let alone to Afghanistan. So I know that there were a lot of active units that were, salivating, hoping to get that deployment. And when it got to us, I'm sure that we probably pissed off somebody somewhere, because they're sending reservists over there, and not an active unit that's ready to go and whatnot. But we were blessed to get the chance to put to use the training that we had gone through.
How do you? I mean, it does. I would assume that you'd only be able to speculate, but why do you think that occurred? Was it because of your command staff really pulling strings for you to get that deployment, or was your unit just proving yourself to be that efficient?
Well, at the time we were the ready battalion. So every few years you have to go. Every reservist unit has to go. Well, active too, but reservist units go through a series of ranges at 29 Palms over in California, and it's kind of like, if you go through these ranges and you prove yourself well, and everything goes well, then you're marked to the ready battalion. In case something goes wrong and they need a reservist unit, here's a unit that we have that can go do the work. And so we had completed our time in 29 Palms in June of 2016. So we were the ready battalion, and there were murmurs already at that point that we were going to be going somewhere. We just didn't know where. But then again, it's the Lance Corporal. We call it the Lance Corporal Underground, the rumor mill, so to speak. So it's like,
Is this the E4 Mafia?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, are we really going somewhere? I don't know. And so it was January 2017 when finally I got that phone call at 5 in the morning from my team leader saying, "Hey, you guys are going to Afghanistan. I'm checking out before then. You're leaving later this year. Talk to you later." Hangs up. Okay. So then,
Cool story, bro.
yeah, it's a cool story. And I woke up like 2 hours later. I'm like, did I really get a phone call from Lance Corporal who, whatever, or was that a dream? And sure enough, phones are blowing up. Like, hey, did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? So as far as like why we got to go, I don't have any speculation. I don't know why we got picked or why we got chosen. If somebody did pull strings, then thank you. Because we wanted to go. We wanted to put to use, what we were trained to do. And a lot of civilians that might be listening might understand hearing that, like, you wanted to go, and some people might be like, oh, how could he say he wants to go kill? I'm like, no, it's not that at all. Military life isn't just about learning to kill. It's also defense.
Yeah.
It's also like, training to defend others and defend yourself and defend the people to your left and right. It could be humanitarian efforts. It's not just going to go kill, And so, no, we didn't want to go just because we wanted to kill, or just because we wanted to like do harm, or because we were violent and had built up anger. It's because we wanted to put to use what we were trained to do. And having the mission of training, advising, and assisting the Afghan army is an opportunity for us to serve a purpose and make a difference. And yeah, the possibility of danger is there. So we would put to use these other tactics and other, skills that we have learned. But, the chance to go and do all that was a big deal for us.
So as a reserve unit, I mean, you had all of this workup training, preparing for deployment and stuff like that. But all of you guys are also coming with a different skill set, just generally working at home and stuff like that. How did that interact with everything?
Yeah, so it's funny to say that, because it's so true, and it definitely came into use when we were in Afghanistan. When we were in country, one of the side jobs that we picked up was expanding the base a little bit. So when we first got there, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was like it might have been like a 200 meter by 200 meter little square in the map that we were living in, and that was our camp right there in Camp Shorab. And of course, we had civilian contractors and our unit and other attachments all living in that little part of the base. And at some point, probably about halfway through the deployment, we started pushing out the boundaries a little bit more and building so that we could um, obviously be tactically sound and be covered. Um, but we needed more space for vehicles and for personnel. If things were to vamp up a little bit down the road after our time there, we wanted to prepare the next unit so that they could have that space and freedom to move for a little bit and some breathing room, so to speak. And so part of like, you know, rebuilding that part of the base, other skill sets come into handy. And so it was all the it was, it was all the truck guys, that worked on their own vehicles at home that had all different skill sets to, work on machines, work on vehicles, work on, had some kind of construction background or had some kind of like handyman background, or it was all the trades guys. Our reserve unit is a lot of guys who work in trades one way or another. And so they were able to come together and do some other jobs to help fulfill that part of the mission as well too. The unofficial mission, I should say. And so yeah, we had guys that like, hey, can anybody fix this? Or, does anyone know how to use could drive a flatbed or work a forklift or whatever. There were we had a few guys that we could depend on for that sort of thing.
You couldn't rely on the Marine Corps to do that.
We were the Marines. The actual Corps? No, no, to bring extra, extra guys, and extra vehicles. Nope, you can fix what's there on base and use that. And yeah.
You didn't get the nicest stuff out there?
Vehicles, well, actually, I take that back. No, the vehicles weren't. Each vehicle, I swear, had some kind of quirk, like a door that didn't shut just right, or you had to seat belts are kind of finicky. Like every vehicle, even civilian vehicles too. Like every vehicle has its quirks, and so certainly those vehicles had their quirks. So when the pullout happened in 2021, and they were showing the Taliban taking the vehicles, all we could think was like, yeah, good luck running that machine. I remember that machine. That thing didn't work worth a damn. But we're making lightheartedness of a serious situation. But yeah, those vehicles were interesting to say the least.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit, but
for sure.
So your 10 months of workup prior to the deployment, was there anything like really outstanding that comes to your mind that like you didn't experience before that time?
Sorry. I'm laughing because at one point, yeah, there was some other trainings we had to do that was important to the mission that we were going to have. When I was in North Carolina, they picked like three of us, I think it was, to learn how to drive school buses because we were told we'd be driving school buses in Afghanistan. I don't know for what. I don't know why. Maybe I misheard something. I was one of the guys that got picked to learn how to drive a school bus. So while the rest of the company had to go to the field, which in North Carolina in August is not pleasant, we had to drive a school bus on Main side for about a week or so. And at the end of the week, once we were done got our hours in and we learned how to drive the school bus, we drove around Jacksonville, North Carolina, like freaking like 10 times, I think, just to get our hours in. It took turns going around the base in a school bus just to get this license. And so then we get brought out to the field after the fact to join everybody else. And they're pissed off. They're grouchy. They, the stink when you're in the field for a period of time. They just rancid stink. And here we show up in a fresh camis, ready to go, like, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like, hey, guys, how's it going? We're out there for like half an hour catching up with them. What have you been working on? What are you guys doing out here? And then we hear, hey, where are the four Marines that, learn the school bus Marines? Right here, sir. Blah, blah, blah. Need you back need you back at Main side. Somebody effed up your paperwork. You have to redo it all over again. So we had to go back to Main side and do it all over again. So we never were in the field for that little field op. And then why I laugh is because when we got to Afghanistan, the buses that we drove were not school buses. It was like an oversized Toyota that was like 8 tall and it was just glass all around. And like I'm sure you've seen them, a European version of a oversized minivan. And so that was the bus that we drove in Afghanistan. It was even a school bus that you needed a license for or anything like that. So that was one thing that stuck out for sure. Probably not the answer you were looking for, but it stuck out. Um, Other things that did stick out though was just more. We could not harp enough on like IED lanes and patrolling, and then we did practice a little bit of Dari and Pashtu. Not much, but we did what we could. Um, and then just working on um, looking out for insider threats, um, and as well as we knew that part of our mission out there was gonna be like some flight line security, so like pushing a convoy out to the flight line and holding security, a perimeter for the planes coming in and out, as well as the personnel and cargo. We had SOCOLAT missions, so we had to practice. What did that look like? Um, and then also QRF, Quick Reaction Force. What does that even mean? What does that mean for us? And then, which included having to practice, you know, medevac, operations and whatever. Getting people on and off helicopters and planes and whatnot, and getting to the to medical and whatnot. So that was a big deal. Oh, and then combat lifesaver courses too. I did some of that kind of training before we went over there too.
All right, we're going to take a break there. Tune in next week to wind up finding more out about Travis's deployment and his newfound cause in his post-military life. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to get notified of next week's episode.